It is 4th April 1900. Just before the Greek Easter, a group of Greek sponge divers were sailing through the Mediterranean near the Greek island of Antikythera. The captain of the ship was Dimitrios Kontos. They were on their way to Tunisia from their island of Syme, near Rhodes. When the ship reached halfway between Crete and Peloponnese, they encountered a storm. Forced to change their normal route, they decided to take shelter from a storm, near Antikythera. Seeking refuge from the tempest, they found solace in the sheltered port. Meanwhile, they decided to look for sponges while they waited for calmer conditions. Soon after, diver Elias Stadiatis emerged from the depths, trembling with fear and clutching a broken hand of a statue. He was mumbling about a heap of dead naked people. This is a beginning of the story of the most intriguing object ever found, that altered the understanding of historians and scientific community forever. Captain Kontos was skeptical but curious, and decided to dive himself. What he found was, the dead naked people were marble sculptures scattered on the seafloor, along with many other artifacts. Dimitrios Kontos and his team realized the seabed was full of antiquities. However, they had to continue to Libya and Tunisia to collect sponges, as they had to pay every year an enormous debt and work very hard for their families. Few months later, they returned with their sponges back home to the island of Syme that was still under Turkish occupation. Captain Dimitrios Kontos made a meeting with the educated ones and the Greek authorities of the island to decide what to do with the antiquities. They discussed the matter with others, including their Simian archaeologist professor of the University of Athens, A. Oikonomou, and with the help of the Greek state and the Greek navy, under the supervision of the Greek archaeological authorities, performed a very lengthy, difficult, even deadly expedition. In some places, they had to break with hammers a conglomerate that formed a 10-centimeter thick rock. Over the following months, the work continued in a stop-and-start manner, with interruptions caused not only by weather, but also by an investigation. Later exploration in the summer of 1901 caused the death of one diver and paralyzed two more from decompression sickness. The conditions under which the divers worked would have made it impossible for them to survey the wreck in an archaeologically scientific way, even if they had had the training to do this. It was simply a salvage operation carried out under oversight by the ministry and its archaeologists. A wealth of statues, statuettes, household goods, glassware, pottery, jewelry, coins, and amphorae were brought to the surface during these tough and brave marine excavations. They discovered almost 100 statues made of marble and a few in bronze. Amongst the treasures, they discovered a piece of metal covered with seashells that looked like a stone, as it was calcified. All of the items retrieved from the wreckage were transferred to the National Museum of Archaeology in Athens for storage and analysis. The considerable bulk of this Antikythera treasure included spectacular artifacts, which drew much attention. Understandably, therefore, the small pieces of the fragmentary instrument were examined closely only some months later. Months after it was recovered, the object split apart, revealing tiny gear wheels inside, around the size of coins. On 17th of May, 1902, archaeologist Spiridon Staes, during his visit to the museum, found that one of the pieces of rock had a gear wheel embedded on it, and something that looked like an inscription in Greek. There had been a wooden case associated with the object, but this, as well as the wooden planks from the ship itself, had subsequently dried out and crumbled. Further examination and meticulous cleaning of the corroded bronze lumps revealed additional pieces belonging to the mysterious object, and soon an elaborate geared mechanism made of bronze and measuring about 33 by 17 by 9 centimeters was revealed. It was the object that we now call the Antikythera Mechanism, the most astonishing and historically significant object to have been recovered in the salvage operation. The most important artifact of ancient science that archaeology has ever brought to light. Stays initially believed it was an astronomical clock, but most scholars considered the device to be ahead of its time, too complex to have been constructed during the same period as the other pieces that had been discovered, dated by the pottery on board to the early 1st century BC. Many researchers thought that the mechanism was the remains of a medieval astrolabe, an astronomical device for observing planetary movements and used for navigation. The earliest known example of which is from the 9th century AD in Iraq. But no general agreement on the date or purpose of the artifact was reached, and the enigma was soon forgotten. In 1951, Derek de Solla Price, an English physicist, and at the time professor of the history of science at Yale University, became fascinated by the complexity of the shipwreck mechanism and began what was to be 8 years of detailed study using X-ray photography. In June 1959, the conclusions of his analyses were published as an article in Scientific American, entitled An Ancient Greek Computer. X-rays of the mechanism revealed at least 20 separate gears, including a differential gear. Surprisingly, until then, it was believed that the technology of differential gears was invented in the 16th century. The differential gear allowed the rotation of 2 shafts at different speeds, as used on the rear axle of automobiles. Price deduced from his research that the Antikythera find represented the remains of a great astronomical clock, which had close ties to a modern analog computer. These conclusions met with some unfavorable reactions from scholars. Carl Moore, a retired professor of German at the University of Virginia, refused to believe in the possibility of such a device, and hypothesized that the object must have been dropped into the sea in medieval times and somehow made its way into the wreck. Price had thought that his paper would be a scholarly bombshell, but it wasn't. It turned out that established academics were reluctant to completely rewrite the history of technology. Part of the problem was that by 1974, the Antikythera mechanism was tainted by association with a distinctly unscientific, but wildly popular, book by a Swiss writer named Erich von Däniken. In his 1968 work Chariots of the Gods, Däniken had proposed a theory that aliens brought technology to Earth. The Antikythera mechanism, he argued, was one of their gifts. Price conducted more complete research based on further X-rays and gamma radiographs, along with Greek radiographer Christos Karakalos. In 1974, Price published the results of this research as a monograph entitled Gears from the Greeks, the Antikythera Mechanism, a calendar computer from circa 80 BC. Price's further study showed that the ancient scientific instrument actually contained at least 30 gears, although most of them were incomplete. However, enough of the gearing remained for Price to work out that, when its handle was rotated, the mechanism was meant to show the motion of the moon, sun, probably the planets, and the rising of the major stars. The device was in effect a complicated astronomical computer, a working model of the solar system. This mechanism had once been contained inside a wooden box with hinged doors to protect the mechanism inside. From the inscriptions and the position of the gears, Price proposed that it had a close connection with Geminus of Rhodes, a Greek astronomer and mathematician who lived from approximately 110 to 40 BC. Price believed the Antikythera mechanism to have been built and designed on Rhodes, a Greek island off the coast of Turkey, probably by Geminus himself around 87 BC. Indeed, the shipwreck had contained storage jars from the island of Rhodes in its cargo and was thought to have been journeying from Rhodes to Rome when it sank. The date of the vessel's sinking has been fairly securely tied to somewhere around 80 BC, so presuming that the object was already a few years old when it was lost, a date for the construction of the Antikythera mechanism of around 87 BC. This date is now generally accepted. Price's achievements were a significant step in decoding the Antikythera mystery. Archaeologists infer from the cargo that the ship was on its way from Greece to Rome, as was very common, having visited several ports around the Greek seas. It is possible that the captain or shipowner was from Pergamon, as a treasure of coins found in the shipwreck are dated between 80 and 62 BC, came mainly from this important city. Researchers also propose that these treasures were probably official war loot or merchandise meant for the Romans. This huge ship carrying 300 tons of weight sank in the northern part of the small Greek island of Antikythera. This small island was, for a short period, a naval base of the Persians, so it was very well fortified, and at other times it was a pirate port, as it offered safe base and a very good castle. The ship was full of approximately 100 marble statues. Treasures worth mentioning are the very handsome Antikythera youth, probably the most beautiful bronze statue in any Greek museum. It depicts a young man holding something hanging off his hand, perhaps the head of the Medusa. Also made of bronze is the very expressive Antikythera philosopher. The mix of an extraordinary art and technology was the hallmark of Antikythera salvage operation. The Antikythera device is the earliest surviving item of complex mechanical technology. Technological advances in the modern era have played a major role in the study of the Antikythera mechanism since the day of its discovery. The use of gear wheels more than 2,000 years ago is nothing less than astonishing, and its fine workmanship is as highly developed as any 18th century clock. In recent years, a number of working reconstructions of this ancient computer have been assembled, one being a partial reconstruction by Australian computer scientist Alan George Bromley of the University of Sydney, together with clockmaker Frank Percival. Bromley also made more accurate X-ray images of the object, which were the basis of a 3D model of the mechanism produced by his student Bernard Gardner. A few years later, English orrery maker John Gleave constructed a full working model, with the front dial depicting the yearly progress of the sun and moon through the zodiac against a representation of the Egyptian calendar. One more recent study and reconstruction of the object was made in 2002 by Michael Wright, the curator of mechanical engineering at the Science Museum in London, working together with Alan Bromley. Although some of the conclusions of Wright's new study disagree with certain aspects of Derek de Solla Price's work, Wright does imply that the mechanism is even more ingenious than Price thought. To arrive at his theories, Wright used X-rays of the object using a method known as linear tomography. This technique can show detail from a single plane or region of an object in sharp focus. Wright was thus able to study the gears in great detail and found that the device would have been able to accurately replicate not only the motions of the sun and moon, but those of all the planets known to the ancient Greeks: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So it is possible that by making use of bronze indicators on a circular face, which depict the constellations of the zodiac around its edge, the mechanism would have been able to calculate the positions of the known planets for any specific date. In September 2002, Wright's completed reconstruction went on display as part of the Exhibition of Ancient Technology at Technopolis, a museum in Athens. In 2005, work has been carried out by a new team from the University of Wales at Cardiff, the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, and the National Archaeological Museum, Athens. The team has performed new analyses using nonlinear micro-focus tomography and 3D photography, which have yielded many unexpected, intriguing, and revolutionary results. The most important findings are the discovery that the mechanism predicts solar and lunar eclipses and models the complex motion of the moon very realistically. The moon in the mechanism moves with a variable speed around the Earth, following to a good approximation Kepler's second law. We know from the ancient literature that Hipparchus, who lived from 190 BC to 120 BC, and possibly others before him like the great Archimedes and Aristarchus, knew very well the variable speed of the moon during the month and the eccentricity of the moon's orbit around the Earth. In the mechanism, the variable speed of the moon is realistically translated into the motion of trains of gears using 4 identical ones, with 2 of them interlinked through a pin in a slot. In this way, one gear drives the other at a variable speed, and the moon moves faster at perigee and slower at apogee. The offset of the axle is equal to the eccentricity of the orbit of the moon around the Earth, and so accounts for the elliptical shape of the lunar orbit. We know that Archimedes constructed instruments that measured the angular diameter of some celestial bodies, and our recent studies prove that he had a philosophical school with disciples that continued to take astronomical measurements after his death. Perhaps his students sent the eclipse data in tables to other Greek astronomers, and one of them, perhaps Hipparchus, constructed the mechanism, knowing of Archimedes' prototype. The Antikythera mechanism was a complicated instrument. Therefore, it is not surprising that it was accompanied by extensive inscriptions, which are often quoted as user's manual. Recovered fragments of the mechanism total 82 separate pieces, believed to be around a third of the size of the original structure. The scans revealed previously unseen Greek inscriptions and symbols dotted around the pieces, as well as at least 35 bronze gears, 19 shafts and axles, and 7 pointers, hinting at a device of unparalleled complexity for the ancient world. One crucial clue came from the 2005 X-ray CT study. In addition to showing the gears in 3 dimensions, these scans made an unexpected revelation. Thousands of new text characters hidden inside the fragments and unread for more than 2,000 years. About 3,000 letters have been deciphered up to now. They all fall into 3 broad categories: astronomical inscriptions, technical inscriptions, and geographical inscriptions. Several astronomical terms have been read referring to the sun, the moon, the ecliptic, the Metonic and Saros cycles, and other astronomical phenomena. According to an inscription revealed by the CT scans, each of the dials would have held a color-coded miniature ball representing its orbit. On the back of the case were 2 more dial systems. One was a calendar of lunar and solar eclipses, while the other showed the timing for important athletic events like the Olympics. The dials were based on the Metonic cycle, a sophisticated 19-year, 12-month calendar that reconciled the lunar and solar calendars. It is, however, important to note that, at the Hellenistic period of the apogee of the ancient technology, all prerequisites existed for the construction of the Antikythera mechanism. Yet, had the mechanism not been found, no one would have imagined the high level of technical sophistication that the ancient Greek technology reached. The Antikythera mechanism has also inspired a new generation of scientists and engineers to study ancient technology and engineering. Researchers have used advanced imaging techniques to study the mechanism in detail, and they have been able to create digital reconstructions of the device that provide new insights into how it was constructed and how it functioned. Researchers at UCL believe they have solved the mystery, at least in part, and have set about reconstructing the device, gearwheels and all, to test whether their proposal works. In March 2021, the UCL Antikythera research team published a radical paper in Nature's Scientific Reports showing this new reconstruction. Using computer modeling, the UCL researchers have reconstructed the ancient computer, allowing them to more fully grasp exactly what it was meant to do. Today, the Antikythera mechanism is considered to be one of the most important archaeological finds of all time. Now, a team led by Aristides Voulgaris, a researcher based at the Thessaloniki Directorate of Culture and Tourism in Greece, has revealed yet another new chapter in the evolving story of this ancient computer. Voulgaris and his colleagues believe they have pinned down the initial calibration date of the mechanism, meaning the point in time that the whole system is referentially built upon, to December 22nd and 23rd, 178 BC, according to a recent study published on the preprint server Archive. Today, the Antikythera mechanism is housed in the bronze collection of the National Archaeological Museum of Athens. A replica of the mechanism is also on view at the American Computer Museum in Bozeman, Montana. From a purely pragmatic perspective, the Antikythera mechanism was a relatively portable computational device. That would have been used to accurately reckon a very specific calendar system, and to predict the cycles of days, months, years, and sorrow, as well as lunations, eclipses, and Olympic Games. It would be an invaluable tool for astronomers, mathematicians, civil engineers, and cartographers of the time. From a philosophical perspective, the Antikythera mechanism was built to prove that it could be done. It represents a fulfillment of Aristotelian thought. Through the ages, the lure of scientific answers to the mathematical riddles presented among the patterns in the heavens has challenged our burgeoning intellects. The Antikythera mechanism realized then modern thinking on mathematics, engineering, astronomy, and calendrical calculation in a portable mechanical computational device. History has proved that humans have always loved challenges. The Antikythera mechanism poses another challenge in front of us. Many more mysteries remain to be solved. It is still unclear whether the Antikythera mechanism was a toy, a teaching tool, or had some other purpose. And an obvious question is, if the ancient Greeks knew so much and could build such extraordinarily sophisticated devices, why didn't they go on to invent something more useful? An actual clock, for instance, or a telescope? Mysteries also remain as to whether the ancient Greeks used similar techniques to make other, yet-to-be-discovered devices, or whether copies of the Antikythera mechanism are waiting to be found. The answer at the moment is that, maybe, for the ancient Greeks, making useful tools wasn't as important as it is to us. Maybe they were more interested in knowledge for the sake of knowledge rather than for the sake of getting stuff done. The artifacts recovered from the Antikythera wreck make it one of the most important finds in modern archaeology. The Antikythera mechanism alone has changed our views of the limits of ancient technology, since it predates anything else approaching its level of sophistication by more than 1,000 years. Our journey is far from over. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to stay updated on the latest developments in the world of archaeology and ancient technology. Together, let's embark on a voyage of discovery as we unlock the secrets of the past and illuminate the path to the future.